Well, hello, Miss JJ.
Hey, Natalie, how are you doing today?
I'm swimming right along. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. And I got to tell you, we've got a guest today. She's from our home state of
Oh my
Tennessee. And I
God,
can
she is.
I can use this word. She is one hot mess.
Oh, girl, you know it.
I
You know
love hot
what? We
mess.
aren't we all though?
I
Aren't we
know.
all a little messy some
I
days?
know. Well, that's my southern word for loads of fun as well. And I'm going to tell you about it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, today we have Jessica Allen with us, and she is one busy woman. She operates her own tax preparation and financial counseling service in Middle Tennessee. She has been a FINRA Military Spouse Fellow, an Elizabeth Dole Foundation Fellow, and she authored Financial Fitness for Military and Veteran Caregivers. But she is also a mom to two daughters and a wife to an Army veteran, Chaz, who in 2011 stepped on an improvised explosive device while on patrol in Afghanistan, losing both of his legs below the knee. She is one fierce advocate and a caregiver. Jessica, we are so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, you've had a lot going on. I read your bio and I was like,
Yes.
this woman is
Yeah.
caregiving. She's got two girls. She is going to school. She is doing
Yeah.
all this. And for a lot of caregivers who say life kind of stops when I'm caregiving, you have proven that life does not stop, that you get your family in order and you guys keep going, which is what
Yeah.
I love about
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
tell us about it. So as Nellie says, okay, you were born.
You
skip
were
to the good
born
stuff.
and step to the good stuff.
I was actually born in Indiana, and
Okay.
then
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, I
we'll
was
forgive
actually
you.
born in Indiana, and then my parents came. My parents are from Tennessee. They were high school sweethearts. Grew up in Nashville, and my parents came back to Tennessee, and I grew up in this little town called McMinnville, Tennessee.
Mhm.
It's in between Nashville and Chattanooga. Very, very well located. We're surrounded by beauty, like just surrounded by nature's beauty. We have mountains everywhere. We're minutes from Fall Creek Falls, which has one of the tallest waterfalls in the state. Yeah, I guess I should go into tourism now since I'm plugging our town. But anyway, no, we're just
Welcome to McMinnville.
yeah, it's so pretty. We have Cumberland Caverns here.
Mhm.
We have canoeing and kayaking and just all sorts of fun stuff. So it's a really beautiful place to live. We get to have all four seasons, which is one of the things I love about Tennessee is we do get all four seasons. Sometimes we get them in one day, but we do have all four seasons, right?
That's awesome.
But it's the truth. So I grew up here, and then I went to college in Kentucky. Went to a little college called Kentucky Wesleyan. It's a Methodist school in Owensboro, Kentucky. I was blessed enough back then to be deemed smart enough to go there, and got a degree in political science and history. And I met Chaz on a blind date in
Ooh.
1999. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
19. I'm
blind
jotting
date.
down the notes. Blind
Yes,
date. That was
blind
before
date.
Hotmail. You know, Hotmail
Yes.
was, let's see.
I
No,
still
that's
use
way
my
before
Hotmail.
Hotmail. Yeah.
I still use my Hotmail.
Remember Hotmail?
I still
So.
use it. But yeah, so Chaz and I met on a blind date in 1999, and I graduated from college in December of 2000. We got married in 2001 in February, and everybody knows what happened in September of 2001.
Oh my God,
yeah.
that's right.
So that was a fun year to be married for your first year of marriage in the Army.
So what's okay? So wait, pause, because I'm an interrupting cow.
Yeah,
That's how we
do it.
roll.
Do it.
JJ just might say she's just a cow. But so you're in college,
Mhm.
and is he in the military at that
Yes.
time? Is he
Yes.
older or younger than you?
9 months younger.
Okay, yeah, cougar. Okay, and so you're welcome for that. So he's not. So he's in the military. He's in the Army
Yes.
at that point
Yep.
when you all
Yep.
meet.
Army
And-
infantry. Mhm.
Okay, and you guys are together 10 years before you got married.
No. We
Oh.
got married in February. I
Oh.
graduated in 2000. We got married in 2001.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We had our 10th wedding anniversary at Walter Reed, though.
Mm.
Oh.
Okay.
Lots of fun.
So you guys get married in 2001, and then 9/11 hits.
Mhm.
And then what happens?
Changes the entire U.S. Army. Overnight.
Mhm.
Overnight, the entire Army changed. We went from the biggest threat was him going to Kosovo for like 6 months, which he did.
Mhm.
He did that while we were dating. Kosovo, Sinai, Bosnia, like that was the biggest threat, right? Or going to Korea, but we didn't have any real threats, right?
Right.
And then 9/11 happened, and I was trying to get on base to see. I had a sinus infection, and I was trying to get on base to get to a doctor. and they had shut down the base, and the little birds were flying, and the guy knocked on the window and said, "Ma'am, are you listening to a CD?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "We're at war." Okay. Guns, the whole nine yards. And they directed me back away from base. And of course, base is, on a blackout. Chaz can't call, we can't call in. It was insane. And then he showed up that evening to get his TA-50, which is, his gear. So he shows up to get his gear and it's like, I'll call you as soon as possible. I don't know if I'm going. I don't know. We don't know anything. Like they didn't know anything at the time. And then we got through that and we had Darren September 2002. He was in Korea whenever Darren was born. And then he came home long enough for us to make and have Ryan. And then he was off to Iraq for a year, and then came home, and he was at the NCO Academy at Fort Campbell for 2 years. That was 15 days on, 4 days off. That was fun. It was a really fun tour.
Two girls, two little girls.
Two little girls, because when he goes to Iraq, Ryan's brand new. Darren's like 3, and he goes off to Iraq. So that was a ton of fun. And then we did the NCO Academy, and we never left Fort Campbell because we just got sucked into the black hole that was Fort Campbell. He never left Fort Campbell. He got assigned to 75th Cav, and then he went to Afghanistan. Left in like August and got blown up in January.
So before the IED accident, that's the life though. And I think a lot of civilians don't understand that. Although that's like crazy for us to hear, that's the life that you married into. Like you kind of knew that was what the steps were going to be. Okay, I'm going to have a baby, but I'm not going to have a husband here right now. He's going to be gone in here. That was kind of the pace that you expected, and you grew used to that pace.
Yeah, to some extent, because like I said, whenever we first got together, we weren't at war, right? And so I had to acclimate to the Army environment, which was, if we wanted you to have a family, we issue it basic training, to, oh my gosh, these guys need their families. And I watched the Army acclimate through that. I also watched the Army go from, you come back from Iraq, don't you dare talk about your experiences. You bottle that stuff up. PTSD was not even a term. I remember when PTSD, the term, came out. And now we've gone from, don't you dare, oh, you're cracking, well, we're going to kick you out of the service. And we watched that happen to our peers. They were kicked out of the service for just talking about what combat did to them. Because you know what? Our grandfathers didn't talk about it. And, our fathers didn't talk about it. No, actually they did. It was soldier sickness. It was soldier's heart. It was shell shock. We had all these terms. We just, got this clinical diagnosis of PTSD, right? I mean, that's really what happened. When you go back and you look at the stories, I remember one of Chaz's grandparents, and I don't remember which one it was, when he got injured, they were so upset because whenever the guys came home from World War II and they were injured, they just drank themselves to death. And she was afraid that was what was going to happen to Chaz. And she called me and said, sweetest, Chaz has his grandparents were just wonderful to me, just absolutely wonderful whenever he got injured. And she was honest with me and said that she was so worried about her grandson because all the guys that she knew from World War II that came home missing one limb or a hand, or maybe disfigured, they just drank themselves to death. And I was like, no, I said, things are better now. We've got tools and tricks and trades, and, we're going to do better than that. And the first time she saw him walk, she cried. She was so happy to see him walk. And she was just, I appreciated her candidness so much to be like, she looked at me and she said, I don't understand how he's happy. I don't understand. And she just told me it was a very cool moment for her to go from her generation did this to seeing, you know what I'm saying? So how cool for her to think this is what's going to happen, to see this is what happened. So that was a pretty neat experience too.
What happened? Let me ask you, because I want to go back to and it kind of goes in hand with what Jay said, which was you're kind of living the life. Yes, you've had to adjust between pre-war, pre-9/11 and post. Yeah. And what does life look like, and how does the days go by? And you're raising the girls. Clearly you were meant to have girls. Yes. And love that. Real. But and he's deployed, come back, working weird schedules, and you guys have your routine, and then he has this accident. And so are you working? So picture it, like
Yes.
he's abroad. You and
Yeah.
the girls have your routine. Because
Yep.
I think about how our mom was, our dad. It was funny. I was like, we had our routine with our mom.
Yeah. Yes.
And so,
yes.
and then you get this call. So you're working, right?
Yeah. So I've been doing taxes for over 20 years and financial counseling and stuff. And it was Saturday morning, 8 a.m. And I had it. So whenever Chaz went off to Afghanistan, we had this briefing of guys, get your passports because where they're going, it's not a really good place. And if your soldier is injured, we can get you to them faster. I'm not kidding you. I dropped Chaz off at the base and came home and my passport was in the mailbox. That actually happened. And yeah. And so also we got a leak in our floors and it damaged our entire downstairs. And I discovered that the day he left, and it was so funny, he called from Afghanistan. He's like, how's the floors? I'm like, I'm not talking about the floors right now. How are you? You know, it was really funny. Now it's funny. It was not funny back then. It was very stressful. But because I always joke, every time he leaves, something breaks. Like every single time he left, something would break. And so I just learned how to just, deal with it and, become this independent person I am. So yeah, it's really hard when they're coming back and forth. But the day that he was injured, I had it set up with the unit that if he was catastrophically wounded or KIA, that I would not be alone when I received the news, because I had a friend who was alone when her husband was killed, and she said there's very few things she'd redo in her life, but one thing she wishes that she would have said, I don't want to be alone, because she said that her children will never forget that moment when the soldiers knocked on the door.
Right.
And that always stuck with me. So whenever I said, if anything catastrophic happens to Chaz, I want my mom with me. And so I told my mom, if the Army ever calls, get the information and just come to my house. Well, that Saturday morning they called and my mom pretty much went into shock. And my sister luckily happened to be there. My sister's a nurse. So luckily she was there, and she calls me and she said, Jessica, mom is freaking out because the Army just called. What does this mean? Why is she freaking out? And I said, means that Chaz is hurt and possibly I'm going to get a notification today. And she was like, what? I said, Janice, did they give mom a number? And mom had given her the piece of paper. And I said, let me write that down. And I just need you guys to get in the car. It's going to be a bad day. And she was like, oh my God, like, is this, I was like, this is not a drill. This is not a drill. This is real. And they dropped everything they were doing, grabbed some bags, got in the car, and I called the number, and they did the whole, official, thing. And where are you going to be? Because we might be notifying you today. And this is the initial report, is that, he lost both of his legs, and there was damage to his arm was all I got, was damage to his arm, lost both of his legs, lost a lot of blood. It didn't look good. And I had to give them my address, and I had to stay in place until further notification. So that was fun. It's a great way to start your Saturday morning. And it was my day to be dance mom. So I was supposed to pick up all these kids and take them to dance. And as I'm on the phone with rear detachment, the dad drops off the kids. And I was like, hey, so I can't take the kids to dance today. And he was like, are you okay? I was like, no, this is rear D. Chaz has been hurt. It's pretty bad. They've requested that I stay home, which I was trying to like talk in code because I didn't want kids to hear, put it together. And he was like, oh, dear God, I got the kids. Keep us posted. And he got the kids, which later on I found out that really hit him real hard, like to see that side, because those guys don't see that side. They go and they see their side, but they don't see our side. So I found out later on that really messed up that husband, which I felt bad, but I mean, what can I do? So got the kids sent off to dance, got the Army, got that taken care of. And then he was like, this is the next number for you to call. I was like, okay. And I called my best friend, Jessica, instead. Yes, my best friend's name is Jessica. She's my little from my sorority. And I literally said, it's my turn. That's all I said to her. And her husband had testicular cancer, not even 6 months before. And that was a hard call too. And all she said was Chaz, and we just started crying until like we got past it. And then I told her what I knew, and I said, I'm sitting here staring at this number and I can't call it yet. And she was like, that's okay, let's just keep talking until you can call it. And I was like, okay. So we just kept talking, mostly crying really, and praying. And then she was like, all right, I think you're ready. And I said, I think I am too. And I called it, and they said, oh yeah, we have his report, and he's stable. What? What? I mean, it's like you're talking to Charlie Brown's parents to some degree, right? You're like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," stable, you know? It's like, did you say stable? You said stable? And she said, yes, Miss Allen, this is where he is right now. He's in this battlefield hospital, which right now I can't think of it, but anyway, he's in this battlefield hospital. Both legs are gone. They're still doing an assessment. But he is stable. They do have him stable. And he was even talking. I have notes of him talking. And
Wow.
I was like, oh, holy crap. And she said, yeah, this is good news. She was like, Miss Allen, we're going to keep getting reports. As we get reports, we're going to report them to you, blah, 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 blah. And, and I went from being a 32-year-old widow to literally not giving a crap. Like I'm going to tell you right now, I did not care what else those people said once they said he was stable. Like once they said he was, and that he was talking, because I was like, that was, to me, that was a clue for me. Like that was a sign things are going to be okay because he's talking. He's got his consciousness. Okay, all right, we got this. And then we got through the day, and the U.S. Army, I will forever be thankful for them for calling my in-laws and telling my in-laws so I didn't have to, because whew, how do you call and say, hey, your son stepped on a bomb and we don't know if he's going to make it or not? Like, how do you do that? I don't know. And luckily, I hope I never find out. But, my in-laws didn't get the call that he was so catastrophically wounded, which, I mean, he stepped on a 40-pound bomb. So you kind of can understand why everybody thought he was dead. They all thought it was adrenaline, which to their credit, hello, how many people has that happened to? So to their credit, I got it. But my in-laws got he lost 2 legs and there's damage to his arm call. That's what they got instead. And I'm forever grateful for that. I'm glad that I'm the only person that took that call. I mean, my mom knew something was wrong, but they didn't. They just said, basically we need to talk to Jessica and you are her person and we're supposed to notify you first. So they didn't. So my mom didn't get that call either, but she knew it was bad. She just didn't know how bad, So I'm forever grateful that I took that call. And I'm also forever grateful that the Army didn't tell his guys that he was okay, because I'm the one that got to tell the guys that he was alive. So that's probably going to be, that's honestly one of the coolest moments of my life. Then I was like, no, I said, guys, he's stable. He's coming home. And all sorts of lovely cuss words. And, they were just so excited. And it was like, it's like somebody won an Academy Award. I mean, you could hear it was so loud. I even pulled the phone away. They were so excited. And, the guy turned around and said, Alan's effing alive. And they were all lined up in there to tell me that they were sorry for my loss and all this stuff. And instead I got to flip it on them. And it's still one of the coolest moments I've ever had. That was a cool moment. And so we got through the day, and it's a small Army world, so of course, everybody knew, and got to deal with some crazy people. And then I waited till the next day to tell my girls, because I just didn't know. There were 5 and 8 at the time, so I didn't know.
Right.
There's no how to tell your kids your dad stepped on a bomb book. It doesn't exist.
Right.
So we all sat around and tried to figure out how to tell them. And so I ended up waiting till the next day. Ryan, my little one, woke up with flu and strep the next morning. So it was fun. Got to Walgreens and Chaz called. And I saw this number and I'm like, what is this? And it's Chaz. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is it really you? And he goes, yeah, it's me. He said, I'm high as hell, but I'm here. And, and he's like, I don't know. He said, I had a bad day at work. I said, yes, you did. Yeah, you really did. And he was like, yeah, he said, you all right? I said, oh, we're as good as we are. And he said, when are you going to get here? And I said, I don't know. I'm waiting for the Army to tell me. He was like, yeah, he said, this place is wild. Like, this is crazy. And he's like, yeah, I don't have legs. I said, yeah, I'm tracking. I said, how's the arm? He goes, the arm's still here. He said, I guess they saved it or whatever. And I said, Chaz, I need you to stay. You got to stay with me and let me get home so you can hear it. So you can talk to Darren, because she needs to hear your voice. He's like, yeah. He said, just keep talking to me. I'll be fine for a little while until they come in here and, push more drugs. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I get him in, I get home, I run. And I felt so bad because Ryan is sick, and I just grab her, just run, because she's 5, so I can still pick her up. And I run in there and I get Darren, and we get on the phone, and he's talking to him and he sounded so good. And then my mom and my sister just start crying, and I'm like, geez. And I'm holding it together, and the girls are just like, why are people crying? And it was a crazy moment. And then we got off, because of course we didn't talk very long, and then got off the phone and got calmed down. And Darren looked at me, and I said, okay, what do you know and what do you think you know? And she said, I know something's wrong with Dad. I said, yeah. And she said, but I know he's not Mr. Dave. I should have grabbed Kleenexes because I knew this was going to happen. She said, I know he's not Mr. Dave. And I said, no, he's not Mr. Dave. And she said, I know it's bad. I said, yeah, it's real bad. And I said, yeah, he stepped on a bomb in Afghanistan and he's lost his legs. And she said, okay. She said, how bad? And I said, both legs above his knee. And there's some damage to his arm, but we're not sure about that. And she's like, okay. And she sits there and I'm like, I said, okay, what questions do you have? Because a long time ago, our 5-star amazing pediatrician, she said, let the kids lead the conversation. And when they stop asking the questions, you stop talking. Because at that moment, their brains are at max capacity. They can't handle anymore. And for some odd reason, I remembered that. I still don't know how I remembered that, but I did. And so she sat there and Ryan is just like trying to figure it all out. She's 5. She also has flu and strep. So that was fun. And Darren says, okay, so Dad's missing his legs. And I was like, yeah, he's missing his legs. And she goes, how's he go to the bathroom?
It's a good question.
And I'm sitting here
that sounds very much like a child's question.
Yes. And I'm just like, I'm waiting for like 46 other things. And this heifer goes, how does he go to the bathroom? And I said, okay. And so we had this anatomy book. I pulled it out and explained it to her. And she was like, okay. And I said, so there's like all sorts of ways the hospital can help you go to the bathroom because you know how important it is to go to the bathroom. And she's like, right. And she was like, okay. And then she says, okay, so Dad stepped on a bomb. Like it went boom. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, like, how does that work? And I said, well, unfortunately, when you're at war, the point of being at war is to hurt the other person. And she was like, right. And I said, so someone at some point put an explosive device in the ground and your dad found it with his feet. And she was like, so kind of like when I see the explosions at Disney World, but Dad's was in the ground. And I said, yes. And she was like, okay. And then she was like, but Mama, we just talked to him. He sounds really good. He sounds normal. And I said, well, I mean, that's great, right? That's great. That's what we want. And she said, yeah. And she said, so when do we get to see him? And I said, I don't know. And she goes, when do you get to see him? I said, I don't know. And I said, and here's the thing going forward, always ask me all the questions that you want, but understand that I don't know will be a legitimate answer because sometimes I won't have the answers to your questions. Sometimes we're going to have to just go forward and figure them all out as we go forward. And sometimes I will have like, this is what's going on. And I said, but, and then they said, oh, is that why Aunt Shelley and Granny are here? And I said, yes, because I didn't know when I was going to have to leave or this, that, and the other. And they're like, okay. And then after that, we took it one day at a time. And I was authorized to fly and be with him on Tuesday. So yes, he was injured on Saturday. I got authorized to fly on Tuesday and I was with him on Wednesday at Walter Reed in DC.
Jessica, I hear you taking care of like everybody, like, and you got to address the girls. You're a mom.
Yeah.
You're worried about your mom. She's kind of like, oh my gosh, your mom's taking it really rough. I'm so glad because I hear this support system that you've had, this friend, this sorority sister who, we love that. When does this hit you? Like, does it hit you? Because you're like in this mode. You're going to Walter Reed on Tuesday.
You're in this bipolar high.
Yeah.
What it's probably this manic phase of just like it's almost like your high as a kite is what it sounds like. When does it actually, the realization of this hit you?
When I was packing my bag to leave, his flip-flops fell from the closet.
Gotcha.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's always this little thing that it's like a trigger. It's like, that's going to be different.
Yeah.
It won't be the same.
Yep. And I sat in the floor with those flip-flops, those nasty, nasty flip-flops. I sat in the floor with them and I just held them and cried. And my mom came around the corner because the girls we had got the girls back in school. And my mom just came around the corner and I was just like, ugly cry, can't even talk, what I'm talking, y'all, every girl knows.
Oh yeah.
Every girl knows.
We all know a snot sandwich.
Yes. And I'm just sitting there in the floor because I went to get the luggage. And when I did, he had I don't know why he put the flip-flops up there, but whatever. But I went to get the suitcase. And when I did, I hit the thing just right to make the flip-flops fall. And they fell. And I just sat on the floor and held them and cried. And so that would have been that was that Tuesday. And then we woke up Wednesday morning to a snowstorm. The roads were closed. It's not funny now. It's not funny now. I mean, it's funny now. It was not funny then. My mom had gone up the steps, slipped up the steps, fell, put her head through the drywall. Not kidding. We're trying to get the girls to my friend's house. So I'm driving to the airport in the snow. We're driving 5 miles an hour. I get to the Nashville airport. They tell me that I can't fly out, or they said that my flight was canceled. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I said, my husband's been injured in Afghanistan. I have to get to Walter Reed. And she was like, and then she just ran off. And I was like, okay, I didn't mean to scare you. Bless her heart. She went to the competitor airline to get me on that flight. She ran off to go get me on the last flight leaving Nashville. She comes back. She was like, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. She's like, we're shutting everything down because of the snow, because here and there, and our runway is clear, but DC is about to shut down. So I wanted to get you on that flight and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, I mean, God love her. And she had them rush me through TSA. When I tell you I ran on this flight, I mean, we ran through the flight. And I mean, and this is 10 years after 9/11, and TSA was like, I mean, everybody was awesome. It was like, I've never seen so much awesomeness line up, just, you know, one of the surgeons in Afghanistan, I did his taxes. Makes sense out of that. He calls his wife and was like, hey, they're not going to tell her this. And I'm like, okay, so that was great. The guy who flew the bird that picked Chaz up, I taught his daughter in preschool. He was the one, he just happened to be flying in the air. They were just flying to be flying, right? Get flight hours. And they get the call and they pick Chaz up. I get to the hospital and the guy from the 101st who meets me was with Chaz at the NCO Academy. They were coworkers.
It's such a small world if you think about it. And people are placed in their positions exactly where they're meant to be placed.
America is the land of the free because of the brave. Norwegian Cruise Line never takes that for granted and is proud to support our troops with a discount program for members of the U.S. military, veterans, reservists, and their spouses. Service members get 10% off their cruise fare, where they'll be met with exclusive onboard experiences as a token of appreciation. NCL's Military Appreciation Program was created for veterans by veterans. Learn more about their military discount and program at ncl.com/military. That's ncl.com/military.
Yeah. So I want to move forward. Yeah. I want to move forward because I know that honestly, I mean, I say this respectfully, this is like a lifetime story. You know what I mean? Like there's these little teeny pieces and it takes a while. And so you go to DC, you're there. I know that. And how long is he there in the hospital? Because at this point, are you staying in DC? I know that you stayed at the Fisher House.
Gosh, let's tell that fun story. So I ended up flying back and forth every Wednesday between Chaz and the girls because my mom couldn't leave her job and because FMLA didn't extend, right? At the time. It does now, which I got to be a part of the panel who helped extend the FMLA, which I will always be grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yes. Like when I found out these moms are losing their jobs left and right at Walter Reed because the FMLA didn't extend to them to take care of their wounded sons.
Wow.
True story. Ooh, I had a mom that was fired while her son was in surgery. They brought her down to the lobby and fired her in the lobby. I got another mom got fired by email for missing too much work because the FMLA didn't cover. So anyway, at the time my mom couldn't do anything, right? And so we came up with this plan between my mom, my sister, and my amazing network of friends. Oh my gosh, I was a member of Mom's Club, a PTO, Girl Scouts. My friends put together a meal train. My friends put together a flight train. I had rides to and from the airport. So what I did was every Wednesday, I would leave. I had the same flights every week, by the way. I would leave Nashville, get to DC, spend a week with Chaz, and fly back. And that's how we did it because my mom's work would let her have off X amount of time. So we just made it work. And Fisher House Hero Miles covered all of my flights from what, February to May.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yep, they
Wow.
covered all of them. And we just got it to where I would fly back on that Wednesday and get the kids off the bus.
Mm.
And I mean, and sometimes we did have little incidents here and there, but man, the network I had, like all the people who, it's like I was talking to a friend the other day, she's going through a really hard time. And she was like, because, and I went over to her house, we had drinks and dinner, and I was just talking to her, like the financial part, because that's what I do, right? And I'm talking to her about that. And she was like, thank you so much for doing this. I was like, hey, no problem. She's like, I didn't realize how many awesome friends I had until this happened to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know that. 2011. I learned that lesson in 2011. I got you, girl. I was like, so I'm just paying it forward.
Well, and I'll say this, Jess, I think that I think you find out who your friends are.
100%.
Did you lose any friends during this? And you can just say yes or no.
I did. And this one's still, because my mom's old Southern. Okay. So if my mama don't like you, okay, y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay. Woo, we call my mama Miss Daisy because Miss Daisy likes to be driven around. So it's like the running joke of the family. So Miss Daisy, I had this friend that we were such good friends. I was the emergency contact for her kids at the school. Okay. She was actually there the day that Chaz got blown up. She came over because her husband was the one who picked the kids up for dance and then ended up taking them to dance. He was the one that picked him up. And he goes, I'm going to send her over here. I said, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Because we were like best friends, like literal best friends. Okay. About a month went by and I didn't hear anything from her, and I would text her and she didn't respond. And then finally I got this long text from her and she said it was too hard to be my friend right now.
Mm.
Wow. And my mom said, yep. My mom said, no, it's just the fact that you can't pick her kids up from school anymore. It's just the fact that, because she was working and I was work from home, stay at home, blah, 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 blah. So I could do more, yeah. And honestly and truthfully, that's the truth. And I will tell you that our mutual friends, man, they didn't take it well at all because she never signed up for a meal. She never signed up. And one of the friends was like, what is her problem? And I was like, I don't know. I said, I think maybe just hit too close to home, which it did. Her husband ended up changing his MOS. He ended up switching jobs inside the Army because he said he didn't want that to happen to his family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's hard because it's easy to be angry about it, to be honest with you. Like I wouldn't do you this way, but the reality is that
you don't know.
You don't.
And I think that some of us just can't handle things.
That's right.
And I'm not mad. Was I mad? Yes, I was, because I needed my friend. I did. But God has given me some really kick-ass replacements. And I'm just going to tell you, I have, like, when I broke my foot and I'm sitting in the ER and I'm texting my friends, let me tell you the new shit show dumpster fire I am now.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yes, sorry. But there's only one word. You only have to bleep one. And they're just like, oh my gosh. And I start getting these care packages from my friends and stuff. And just, them reaching out and bringing meals and, I got this, my one friend sent me this awesome blanket. I'm now sleeping with it every night. It's so good. And then another friend sent me some socks. Of course, the really good friends sent me wine. No, just kidding. But
those are the good friends.
Yeah. And somebody sent me coffee, somebody sent me chocolate, books. Oh my gosh. My one friend was like, I'm sending, because I read a lot. I read a whole lot. And she was like, I'm obsessed with this new girl. You're going to be stuck in the bed. I'm going to make sure you stay in the bed. So here's some books. And I was like, okay. And now I've read every book that author has written because I fell in love with her writing. So, but man, I'm so blessed. Like seriously, so blessed. And the Lord has showed me that again and again and again. And every time something has gone on, he has shown me how blessed I am. But I mean, I really hope that next year he gives me a break, because ever since COVID hit, it has just been 3 years of nonsense. Like it has just been, our poor daughter started college in COVID, and that's not college, that was not fun. And, her senior year was killed by COVID. And then both of my fathers were killed by COVID, and my sister's mother-in-law, she passed in the middle of it. And I will die on this hill. Our dog died of COVID. I will die on this hill. That dog was coughing and then it was dead. I'm going to die on that hill. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I know there's no proof. Y'all can make fun of me all you want.
Oh, I'm not making fun of you. I'm not making fun. I'm gonna rewind us back for a second. Because I'm gonna go back to caregiving.
Okay.
Because we're having lots of fun here.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to caregiving because you guys come home. Mm-hmm. Because it's one thing to be in the hospital and that's a different phase of the experience.
Yeah.
And you're going through all of that. And then you come home and now it's time to figure out your new normal.
Yeah.
And so he was injured in 2011. I know he was there for several months.
2 years.
So he was there for 2 years. Thank you.
2 years. Mm-hmm.
And so he's there you're doing this for 2 years. I didn't realize it was as long as it was.
Yeah, we were in the hospital for 2 years. So I flew back and forth from January to May. And then when the kids got done with school, we brought the kids up there. We were living in the Fisher house from February because I was in there by myself. So February to the fall, because we were a part of the Walter Reed Bethesda merger, which was, there are no words to describe Charlie Foxtrot. So that way you don't have to bleep that. That's one of the things I could tell you is Charlie Foxtrot. It was like Walter Reed Bethesda knew the cripples were coming, but missed the memo. Like they didn't even have buttons for the guys to open their doors. Wow. Like, the blue buttons, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Makes sense. Or the so many things we could have done. So many things. We had none of those. And and the Pentagon's like, what are you talking about? We don't have those. So they ended up bringing literally Walmart door greeters over to Bethesda to open the door for the guys.
Wow.
Not making this up, y'all. I'm not. And that's just one of the things. Like, it was like, it's, what is it? Paul Revere, the British are coming. It was like somebody had come over there. The cripples are coming. And we're all laughing because because we have a very dark sense of humor. So anybody who gets offended by that, I apologize. But we do that all the time. Like we talk about the Blue Man Group parking, which is handicap parking. It's Blue Man Group parking. We have all sorts of little jokes that we have, but it's like somebody rode by Bethesda and told them, and they were just like, oh no, what? And then when we showed up, it's like they didn't want us. And it was real. My kids hated Walter Reed Bethesda. They hated it. They loved Walter Reed Army Medical. We had such a great time. We homeschooled while we were in DC.
Okay.
We had a blast. So I did 4th grade and 1st grade at Walter Reed. And then we came home and we homeschooled again until we got into the house we're in now. Because we had to build Chaz's house. We had nonprofits. We had one nonprofit that said Chaz was not wounded enough to qualify for their house. That if we would have let him, if his arm would have been chopped off, they would have built us a house. And I said, well, that's cool. I'd rather have the arm.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's interesting that you that you homeschool the girls while in Fisher House and you moved your life. And so the girls moved and then you guys move back. You have a new home that is
not yet. We moved to Clarksville.
ADA friendly.
No, the Clarksville house was not. It was 2 stories. Chaz would come down in the morning and stay on the bottom level and then go up at night and stay on the top level. Right. And then in 2015, we finally moved into this house. That's ADA. This house was built for him. So literally everything is him. But when we first came home, no, it was not cripple friendly at all. We had to put a ramp on the front porch. It was fun. It was exhausting.
And so and that's what I meant by, I assume that the house that you had here now that had to be built for him to be ADA.
Yeah.
And so you guys are finding your normal. What's it like for you being a caregiver? Because I'm going to go back. I'm keep pushing you back to being a caregiver.
Hey, that's fine.
You are avoiding. I'm like, I'm going to push you back.
Well, and here's the problem with that. Okay. So with being a caregiver, the Army had to tell me I was a caregiver.
Okay.
I mean, legit, because I just did what had to get done. Okay. So whatever the need was, I just jump in and do it. Like, Chaz needed XYZ. Okay. I'm there. And so I think that's a hard time because you're not the first person to point this out that I don't, I know I'm a caregiver. I totally know that. But it's like, for me, it's just, I just get it done. Like whatever it is, like, I do his pills once a week, do all the pills. Boom, that's done. It's part of my caregiving. I get up in front of him every single morning, even now, make sure everything is good. So that way he has his safe environment, I just cleaned out the garage to make sure he has access to everything because, I don't care who you are, the trash piles up in the garage, whatever, because, we all do that. Right. So I just cleaned out that garage to make sure he can get to everything. So it's just stuff I just do. I just do it.
And I don't mean to say like you don't, you're doing all the things I think that, and we would agree with that too. Like we were a caregiver for our mom for the last 12 years, and we wouldn't identify that way. We'd be daughters, or I'm a wife. I mean, I'm just doing what I'm thinking I'm supposed to do. Yeah. And then that's why most caregivers don't identify as caregivers, because we go by these other roles. Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, so whether you're in the military or you're not, or you're a civilian, the role of caregiving is going to have the common threads. Yeah. And it's going to be like the things that, hey, I have to do this so that my loved one, whoever that person is that you're caring for, can get through this door, get through this area, or meet that need, or those pieces of it. And I think, that's why, because I don't know about you, Jay, I keep hearing Jessica taking care of everyone else.
Yes. And I do. I do.
I'm saying a lot about what she's doing.
I don't hear you talking about yourself. So that's what I meant by like you feeling and thinking during this time.
Are you? I mean, you're still working. The girls are in high school at this point.
Yeah. So, I'm still working.
How is this changing your life? Like, are you getting any time for yourself? Do you get assistance? Or
I will tell you. I went back to reading because I used to read and then, was a mom and a worker and this, that, and the other. And it was so fun because when the kids got into school, me and the other moms, we did our own little PTO military moms group, and we all started reading again. And that was really fun. And we actually read the Twilight books because we were that bored.
The Twilight books are good.
So fun.
Here you are.
And I have so many great memories of us going to see the Twilight movies and reading the books and stuff. We had so much fun with that. And then, when Chaz got hurt, and we're in the hospital, there's a lot of quiet. There's a lot of quiet. And so that's when I started reading again and realized how much reading heals me, because I have such a great imagination. I can get caught up in that fiction book. And even so, my first degree is political science and history. I just finished my master's in history in August. And so history I love it. I love history. And again, I have this great imagination. So I'll be reading these books and I'm like, I can see myself there. And it just that's how I take myself away. And then I do love yoga. I love yoga. That's one of my PT goals, is to get back to yoga. Because the people on the podcast don't know that I broke my ankle in 3 places June 10th, and I'm still healing. So I'm trying to get back to yoga because I know that will bring me some peace. And while I was at Walter Reed Army Medical, let me be real clear about this, because this is something that I'm still frustrated with the DoD for. When I was at Walter Reed Army Medical, I had access to mental health, and so did my children. We merged into the new hospital. They took it away. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. And then they eventually brought it back. But that is something that should have gone into the transition, because the beautiful woman who, her name is Dusty, because my kids, it was so funny because Ryan, my oldest daughter, was like, tech offers mental health. And I was like, yeah, you should take advantage of it. Mental health is so important. And they know mom is a big mental health person. And she goes, but I've just never been to mental health before. I said, yes, you have. She goes, no, I haven't. I said, yes, you have. No, I haven't. Yes, you have. And she goes, no, I haven't. I said, Miss Dusty. And she went, what? And I said, Miss Dusty was your child psychologist therapist person at Walter Reed. And she was like, what? And I said, okay, so you're 8 years old. How am I supposed to explain this to you? And she was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Every time she was asking me how I was feeling today. And I was like, you're welcome. And it was so funny.
So beneficial.
Yes. Because when Dusty came to me, and I'll never forget it, it's Chaz's, tubes and everything. And this wonderful woman comes in and she was like, hey, what can we do to help you? We've got mental health. I was like, I'd love it. Let's do it. And she told me that I was one of the very first people to say, she said, normally she had to coax them, and me, I'm like, let's do it. And she was like, what about your kids? Let's do it. What you got? I said, girl, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have anybody to ask, hey, how do you survive a 40-pound bomb with a kid that's 5 and 8? I had no one. I had to literally make everything up as I was going. I'm so blessed to have a great friend of mine who has unfortunately passed away since then, but she was the one that set me up with homeschool. She was the one that helped me figure out she was the homeschool genius. She knew all these different curriculums and stuff. And she was so smart. And she was like, you need this. And she helped me do it. And she gave me the courage to homeschool because I didn't think I could do it. But But my kids were the only school age kids at Walter Reed at the time.
Mm.
And get this, when you're at Walter Reed, and it was in Washington, D.C., you can't attend D.C. schools. That's a legit DOD policy. So my kids had to go to Maryland or Virginia. Well, Maryland and Virginia wouldn't take them because we had a D.C. address. And the Army didn't help me because I'm the only one. I'm the only one at the time. And then the surge happened and all these other kids come in. And at that point, they were at Walter Reed Bethesda. So the kids are going to Maryland schools. So it resolved itself, but it really sucked for me. But it worked out because me and the girls and Chaz, like our family of 4, we have this crazy family bond because we made it as fun as possible. And then the hospital would do all these little fun trips and stuff. Like we went to embassies, we went to the White House, we went to Congress, we went to the Supreme Court, and they let the girls go too because, you know, come on, that's only it's just the fair thing to do. And of course, my kids very well behaved. And so my girls got to have like this insane experience, you know. Darren said she had this girl in high school was so ugly to her and was like, you know, just I don't even remember what it was, but Darren said, you know, Mom, I was like, the girl was like, oh, you didn't meet Michelle Obama, blah, 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 blah. She goes, yep, I Googled myself. I found the picture and I posted it on my Snapchat story. I was like, that's my girl.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Love it. You know?
Oh my gosh.
But no, in regards to taking care of myself, honestly and truthfully, I have to say I probably didn't learn that until probably we moved here. Honestly, because I still don't really take good care of myself. I'm just, you know, I mean, I do. I'm better at it. But it took a lot of breakdowns to figure out that you know, if I don't take care of me, like if I didn't sleep, how am I going to help anybody?
Right.
So, you know, there's just stuff like that. And then we did no, you know what? I think maybe it was when we got back to Clarksville, because at the hospital, things were like, it was a different pace. But then when we got home and we were on our own, it was really frustrating. And we had this joke about how everybody needs to go to their corner. And so everybody goes to their corner of the house. It's like, all right, time out, everybody go to your corner. And that's just everybody's mental health break. Like, you know, Chaz goes to his office, I'll go to my office, or Ryan and I, the little one, we are the queens of going outside. Like we'll just go outside and sit on the carport. We live out on 10 acres and we have the most gorgeous view. We have chickens and ducks and dogs and fun. And so we'll just go out there and just sit. I go out and sit on the carport and read all the time. I enjoy the fresh air, enjoy just the moments of just the peace. You know, there's no hustle and bustle of the city. You mean we have traffic, but nothing like DC, Nashville, Clarksville. You know, and then I'm really lucky that I never let go of myself. I never let go of myself. I've always been, even with Chaz getting hurt, I was doing taxes that day and I still did tax returns when I was home. The weeks I was home, I would do taxes and my clients were just great. I still have some clients that saw me through that and they're still with me to this day. And I would just get to them when I got to them. And they've always been so nice and so understanding. And I actually won my FINRA fellowship the fall of 2010. And I notified them of what happened to Chaz and they helped me. They gave me extensions and helped me get through it so I could finish that. Wow. And then the stars aligned where I could get my master's and I just finished that. So I've always held on to those things because like, I love Chaz Allen. I love him. Like literally, I'm going to tell you right now, the little girl that grew up, you know, thinking Disney-ish type thing with love and all that stuff. I honestly didn't know love could be this awesome. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you see those Disney movies and stuff and you're like, oh, it's so cute. And you see the rom-coms, like, oh, it's so cute. You know, when you go through something like this and you get to that bare bones where everything's stripped away because there's just so much going on. There's no filters. You don't have time for filters. You just don't. And you get to really see each other. And I mean, a lot of marriages fall apart when that goes down and it is what it is. But we had already been doing this for 10 years when he got hurt. And I was joking around with him. Like he had this marker board and I would write, it's this many days until it's cheaper to keep me. Like I even got the number for JAG, y'all. I even got the number for JAG. And I wrote, this many days till it's cheaper to keep me. Here's the number to JAG. Yeah. Like that's the kind of stuff that we've always done that stuff. Like he'll joke around and he'd be like, yeah, you know, I thought about divorcing her, but it's just cheaper to keep her at this point, you know.
That's
the
truth.
and we joke around about it all the time. But being in the hospital, so many cool things came out of a really horrible situation. And, you know, some really bad things came out of it too, but the bad things for me were the people that you find out who people are. Now, I always say catastrophic trauma and death will show you who people are. Those two things, you will find out who they are, and you will find out who's a coward. You will find out who's a hero. You'll find out the true heart of a person.
Wow.
And the thing that I learned about Chaz was he was even more amazing than I thought he was. And, you know, and I told him, I said, I don't even know how many times I've fallen in love with you, because he's inspired me. It's like, what a huge knockdown. You're the 6 foot tall built guy, and you take one step, just one step, and you ruin your body, your mentality, your life, your family. I mean, you're thinking that, right?
Right.
And I remember when we were in the hospital, he said something about that. And I was like, yeah, I know we're here. Me and the girls aren't going anywhere. And I remember him saying, it's going to be so hard. I said, probably. It's probably going to suck too. And then he made this comment. He goes, and now I'm going to be a burden on you. I was like, dude, where have you been? You've always been a burden. Like,
wow.
Infusing humor. I like that.
Yeah. And it was funny. The first time I still remember walking, which he doesn't remember this, of course, because he was very much on drugs. I remember when I walked into the ICU room, and the doctor had a nurse come in behind me, because apparently people faint.
We don't know anything about that.
You don't know anything about that. Okay. So
No.
apparently people faint when they see their loved ones with the blood in the tubes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in and I grabbed his hand, and he just looked up at me, and he said something like, he's like, yeah, I'm sorry about this. I was like, do you understand it's tax season? Like, this was horrible timing. And he said, he told a reporter later on, because the reporter wrote it down. He goes, I don't remember what all we said, but he goes, I remember her grabbing my hand and saying, you realize this is tax season and your timing is horrible, or something to that effect. And he goes, and then she laughed and I laughed. And he said, and at that moment, I knew we were fine.
Wow.
And he said, and yeah, we've had bad days. I'm not going to lie. I don't care who you are. I love Michelle Obama's last little interview that she did on Netflix, because I loved it so much when she said, I hated my husband for about 10 years.
Jessica,
you know, be real.
I feel like we could talk to her for days. Jessica, Natalie, I think we're like out of time. So you have one question. I know,
Sorry.
but I feel like we have to have her back, because she's
Dude, that was really fast. That was really fast.
I know.
Natalie has got one question that she always has to ask.
It is the most important question.
It is the most important question. Hit it,
Are you
Natalie.
ready?
Yes.
What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Oh,
the thing that you do only for yourself.
Oh, geez. You know, it's probably Starbucks coffee.
Any flavor, certain flavor, any certain type?
Vanilla sweet cream cold brew.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, Starbucks, right. you can sponsor this episode. Thank you, Starbucks.
Yes.
We do that for everybody who says something. I'm like, and thank you, Starbucks.
That's yeah. I mean, probably buying books that, you know, my to be read pile is already huge enough. But I try to avoid bookstores on purpose because I'll buy more books. But no, I am the person who, like, if I'm going to town, I mean, no kidding. I left Cookeville yesterday and I got a coffee for today. Like I got the cold brew and stuck it in the fridge for today.
I love that.
It's so funny because somebody said something about they didn't know what to get me. I was like, dude, books, coffee. Woo.
Done.
Jessica, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your story.
No, thank you guys. Thank you guys.
We love you. And thank you so much for being a part of our series, Heroes Caring for Heroes. Because I think it's just so important that, you know, caregivers come in all different shapes and sizes.
Yes.
And our military caregivers also come in different shapes and sizes. And this is such a privilege to be able to get to share your story and your very much your commitment to your husband, your children, and those around you, because there's a reason your network loves you.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a
Because you
reason I
love
love
them
my
back.
network. It's
I know
it's a,
you
it's a
do.
reciprocal
I
love.
know you
It
do.
really is.
And so I'm
It is.
just telling you, there's a reason. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
guys,
mean, you were talking about the other two people you interviewed. I know both of them. Love them. Oh my gosh,
Yep.
they're fabulous.
Exactly.
Amy and Richard are fabulous. They are so fabulous. And
Yeah.
I hope they feel the same way about me because I love them.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it's been
I
a
am
while since
certain
we've seen
they
each
do.
other, but yeah, they're great. I love
I
those
am
guys.
certain they do. Guys, thanks so much for listening. Until we confess again, thanks so much.
Bye-bye.